and welcome to Vantage this week. It's a roundup of the week gone by, the biggest developments, the biggest newsmakers, and the most important analysis. All of it has been compiled for this weekend special for you. Tonight, we'll start with Canada. It has been an incredible week. We saw the collapse of the India-Canada relationship. It began when Justin Trudeau made a sensational claim. He suggested that India was behind the death of a Khalistani in Canada, and Ottawa asked an Indian diplomat to leave. India responded with a tit-for-tat. It evicted a Canadian diplomat. And New Delhi did not stop there. Visa services to Canadians stand cancelled, and India is calling out Canada for giving a safe haven to terrorists. We'll bring you a recap. We'll also tell you how Trudeau's move backfired on him. In other news, Saudi Arabia says it is getting closer to normalising ties with Israel. Pakistan's Nawaz Sharif is praising India. We'll tell you why. And India has passed a historic women's reservation bill. Let's get started. Canada's spat with India is entering a new phase. Ottawa is changing its approach. They're trying to reclaim the narrative from verbal volleys. Canada is shifting to selective leaks. Some stories have come out today, all with source-based information. They're attributed to the Government of Canada. None of these officials is speaking on record. Different Western media outlets have published these stories, all with similar conclusions. Broadly, there are three takeaways. One, Canada is apparently sitting on clinching evidence. There is some secret intelligence, and it's been gathered through questionable means. Two, their Western allies are helping them. They're feeding more intelligence to Ottawa. And three, they're making demands from India, not just Trudeau. Apparently, Joe Biden too raised this with Prime Minister Modi. And what was India's response? We'll discuss that. Let's start with the leaks. The first one came from Canada itself. Their public broadcaster published this. It basically says Canada is not lying. It does have intelligence, but what kind of intelligence? Both human and signals intelligence. Apparently enough to establish a link between India and the death of Nijjar. Now a quick recap here. Canada is investigating the death of this man, Hardeep Singh Nijjar. He died in a shooting incident in the month of June this year. He is a Khalistani, a sanctioned terrorist. He ran a banned terrorist outfit out of Canada. Nijjar was also involved in the Khalistan referendum. He was whipping up support for the breakup of India and for a separate Khalistani state for Sikhs. Now, this is a separatist terrorist campaign. Canada is giving such groups a safe haven. And now it says it has credible intelligence linking India to Nijjar's death. This report was published today. It talks about the intelligence gathered so far. And what kind of proof does Canada have? We do not know that. Not yet. The report does not give details. All it says is Ottawa has proof against Indian diplomats. It has communications which could be relevant to this case. That's all. Now, two problems with the so-called proof. One, the world still doesn't know what it is. And if and when it does come out, it will have to be scrutinized. Problem number two, were Indian diplomats snooped upon? It seems that they were. Indian diplomats were being watched in Canada, not just by Canadian sleuths, but also by Canada's allies. We are talking about the Five Eyes, the Intelligence Sharing Alliance, Canada, the US, the UK, Australia, New Zealand. These are the Five Eyes members. Reports say one of these Five Eyes members had intel about Indian diplomats and they passed it on to Canada. Is that legal? Can diplomats be spied upon? Do they not enjoy certain protections? Well, they do. Diplomats have special rights. Their rights are spelled out in the Vienna Convention. It doesn't say very much about spying in particular, but it does talk about the protection and privacy of diplomatic missions, diplomatic bags, and diplomats themselves from any persecution and prosecution, rather. Did Canada or its allies violate any of these rules? It's hard to say because we don't really know how they gathered the evidence they claimed to have. Yesterday, Justin Trudeau spoke again. He refused to release the evidence, but he called on India to join the investigation.
There is no question that India is a country of growing importance and a country that we need to continue to work with, not just in the region, but around the world. And we're not looking to provoke or cause problems. That's why we call upon the government of India to work with us.
Trudeau is just repeating himself here, while his officials are going around planting stories. Let me show you another one. This is about Canada's claims again. It says Biden discussed the case with Prime Minister Modi and it happened during the G20 summit. So what did Prime Minister Modi tell Joe Biden? That they don't know or they haven't written about. But when the Indian Prime Minister spoke to Justin Trudeau during the very same summit, he rejected his claims. And India has been firm in its rejection. It's unlikely to change. What is America's position? Here's what the White House said.
There's not some special exemption you get for actions like this, regardless of the country. We will stand up and defend our basic principles, and we will also consult closely with allies like Canada as they pursue their law enforcement and diplomatic process.
It's a bit rich coming from the US. What basic principles will they defend? They invaded Iraq, they invaded Afghanistan, they routinely launch drone strikes, they engineer regime changes. Ask Imran Khan. America has mastered the craft of foreign interference. So I'm not sure they are in a position to give special exemptions. But that's another story. We'll save it for another day. For now, we focus on Justin Trudeau. He wants condemnation from the West and cooperation from India for some credible proof he claims to have, but he won't share. Justin Trudeau made his allegation on Monday. Since then, everyone is asking the same question. Why? Why make such a public spectacle? Why not handle the issue diplomatically? A recent opinion poll could have the answer. Canadians were asked to choose their next Prime Minister. Look at their response. 40% respondents picked Pierre Poilievre. 40%. He leads the Conservative Party. That's the main opposition in Canada. And how much did Trudeau get? 31%. Only 3 out of 10 Canadians want Justin Trudeau to stick around. Number 3 is also a familiar face, Jagmeet Singh. He's a Khalistani. He received 22% of the vote. So the big takeaway is this. If elections were to be held today, Justin Trudeau would lose. The Conservative Party will form the government in Canada. And there's a message for Jagmeet Singh too. His support has slipped 4 points since September last year. So Trudeau is on shaky ground. His own popularity is plunging, and so is that of his Khalistani buddy. And this relationship is crucial to the story. You see, Trudeau leads a minority government. His party, the Liberals, do not have a majority in Parliament. So how are they in power? Thanks to Jagmeet Singh. His party offers outside support to Trudeau, sort of like a kingmaker. And what does this kingmaker think of the allegations? The allegations against India. Listen to his statement. To all Canadians, this is my vow. I will leave no stone unturned in the pursuit of justice, including holding Narendra Modi accountable. That's what Jagmeet Singh has said. How about that? Zero proof, zero credible information. And who does Jagmeet Singh blame? The Prime Minister of India. Not even diplomats or embassy staff, straight to the Prime Minister. And this attitude betrays the intentions of Justin Trudeau and Jagmeet Singh. They're playing to the gallery. Sikhs make up 2.1% of Canada's population. I know it does not sound like very much, but their political clout is much more. And the reason for that is Canada's election system. Let me explain and listen to this carefully. Here in India, political parties pick candidates. They have high commands or election executives. They give the tickets. These bodies select the candidates who will contest an election. Canada has a different system. Many commentators call it pay to play. The Canadian system, pay to play. Let's assume you want to contest, you want to run in an election. Then you must mobilize voters from your party. They have to gather, submit a form, and pay a fee. Only then will you be nominated. Who would you call for something like this? Maybe family, or friends, or colleagues. But what if you had an organized religious congregation, one where every family knows the other? One where every family is relatively well off? That's the Sikh community in Canada. And within that community, Khalistanis have an upper hand. We've seen their rallies and referendums. Clearly, mobilization is not a problem for them. And this faulty system has poisoned Canadian politics. A minority within a minority has hijacked the narrative in Canada. And leaders like Justin Trudeau are playing along. Same within his own party. Some within, rather, his own party are calling him out. Like Chandra Arya. He's a Liberal Party lawmaker. He says terrorism cannot be glorified as free speech. Listen to what he said.
I can't understand how glorification of terrorism or a hate crime fully uphold the rule of law. I can't understand how glorification of terrorism or a hate crime targeting a religious group is allowed in the name of freedom of speech and expression.
You heard him. That was Trudeau's own MP, and he's right. Most Canadian Sikhs do not support Khalistan. Only a tiny minority do. And Trudeau's support has emboldened this tiny minority. India gave him every opportunity to correct this mistake. Sources tell us that New Delhi submitted 26 extradition requests to Canada. 26 requests. How many did Canada approve? 0. These are bona fide separatists and terrorists. There is evidence against them. It was presented to Canada, yet Canada shielded them, maybe even weaponized them. We have learned from our sources that Hardeep Singh Nijjar was working for the Canadian intelligence. This is what Indian sources are telling us, that Nijjar could have been working for Canada. If true, this is massive. Hardeep Nijjar was a designated terrorist. He was an enemy of India. Instead of cracking down on him, Canada may have weaponized him. Yet Trudeau blames India. He keeps talking about not provoking, but his actions suggest otherwise. On Monday, Canada expelled an Indian diplomat from their country. They revealed his name. They also revealed that he was a RAW agent. RAW is the Research and Analysis Wing. It is India's foreign intelligence agency. And this is a major escalation. Our sources say India trusted Canada with this information. We do that with friendly countries. We tell them who the intelligence officer is. This is supposed to be confidential information. But Canada went public with it. They blew the officer's cover. Again, why so much drama? This is a question for Justin Trudeau to answer. His actions make one thing clear, though. He's willing to stake everything on this fight. Because this is not about Canada or its people. This is about Trudeau's political future. And speaking of military allies, Ukraine has just lost one. Their neighbor and NATO member, Poland. The breakup was brewing for a while now. It started when Poland banned the import of Ukrainian food grains. You see, Ukraine cannot export via sea. So they dumped their food grain in neighboring countries like Poland. But Poland said, no more. Their farmers were losing out because of cheap Ukrainian grain. Kiev rejected this decision. They also filed a lawsuit at the World Trade Organization. Let me repeat that. A lawsuit against their own ally. Poland did not say very much about the legal action, but this week President Zelensky went a step further. He crossed a red line during his speech at the United Nations General Assembly. Listen to this.
And it is alarming to see how some in Europe, some our friends in Europe, play out solidarity in political theater, making thriller from the grain. And they may seem to play their own role, but in fact, they are helping set the stage to a Moscow actor.
Big mistake there. Poland rejected Zelensky's statement. This is what their government said, and I'm quoting, "No one in the world has shown more generous help to Ukrainians than Poles. President Zelensky should remember this." In other words, show some gratitude. If the matter ended there, Ukraine would have been fine, but Poland was not done yet. Hours later, their prime minister announced a big decision. He said Poland would stop giving weapons to Ukraine.
We are not transferring any weapons to Ukraine because we are now aiming to defend ourselves with the most modern weapons. If you want to defend yourself, you have to have something to defend yourself with.
And this is massive. Poland has been one of Ukraine's biggest supporters. They have given military aid worth $3 billion. This includes 320 Soviet-era tanks, plus around 14 MiG fighter jets. But Poland says no more. Maybe other Western countries can plug this military gap. But the political gap? Highly unlikely. Poland is currently hosting 1.3 million Ukrainian refugees. They are lobbying for Ukraine's entry into NATO. Could this support also end? The signals are certainly not encouraging. Poland has spent around $16 billion to support refugees. $16 billion. They gave money for healthcare, education, housing. But the government says this aid will end in 2024, so no more financial support either. What explains the sudden U-turn by Poland? Well, Ukraine's lawsuit is just one reason. Another reason is Poland's domestic politics. Elections are due next month, and the ruling party is facing a lot of pressure. People are not so thrilled about hosting refugees anymore. Last year, around 91% of Poles supported welcoming Ukrainian refugees. And this year, it's fallen to 69%. So supporting Ukraine is not that popular anymore. Having said that, Kiev too must take the blame. They're still in this war because of their allies, because of the weapons they got. So what Zelensky did was a diplomatic blunder. First, he filed a lawsuit against Poland. Then he raised the issue at the United Nations. It's not surprising, though. Ukraine has made the same mistake with other countries, even India. Their foreign minister once said that India is buying Ukrainian blood. Why was that? Because New Delhi imported Russian oil. And recently, Zelensky's advisor also attacked India. He said India and China have quote-unquote weak intellectual potential. I guess he meant IQ. Kiev later rejected these comments. But you can see the broad trend. Now, we get that Ukraine is under a lot of pressure. They need all the support that they can get. But surely, such outbursts do not help. Plus, it's not like Ukraine has been isolated. NATO is very much behind them. And that support was on full display at the United Nations Security Council. Zelensky attended the UNSC meeting on Wednesday. His first in-person appearance there. Now, Albania is presiding over the council this month, the United Nations Security Council. They invited Zelensky to speak first, even before the permanent and non-permanent members. Russia objected to this. Listen to the exchange that followed.
We wanted to ask you on what basis you propose to give the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky the floor before members of the Security Council speak.
I want to assure our Russian colleagues and everyone here that this is not a special operation by the Albanian presidency.
We regret that the Albanian presidency has demonstrated a blatant disregard for consensual practices of the Security Council. They have placed their political and ideological beliefs above the obligations of the President of the Security Council.
I must say that coming from you, all this lecture of violating the rules in this building is quite an impressive shoot.
Some good comebacks there. But remember, this is the United Nations Security Council. Their job is to work for world peace. Instead, they're roasting each other. Zelensky did manage to speak eventually. He said that countries waging war should lose their veto power. In other words, Russia's veto should be taken away.
Any participation of the Security Council membership should be suspended for a period of time when such a state resorts to aggression against another nation in violation of the UN Charter.
All this talk led to nothing. The United Nations was Zelensky's chance to rally the world, to meet leaders and gain new allies. Instead, he will return from New York one ally short. What do you do when you meet an old friend? You give them a hug, you talk about the old times, you discuss the future. What is it that you do not do? Make them wait. But that's the story of the US and Israel right now. First, Joe Biden took forever to invite Netanyahu to America. When he finally did, Biden made him wait. This was in New York, on the sidelines of the United Nations General Assembly. Netanyahu was invited to Biden's Intercontinental Hotel. But once he arrived, he had to wait. Biden was around 30 minutes late. Not a great start to a meeting after ages. But soon tensions gave way to some banter. Take a look at this exchange.
If you and I, 10 years ago, were talking about normalization with Saudi Arabia, and I think we'd look at each other like, who's been drinking what? But we're
Good Irish whiskey.
Good Irish whiskey. That's the reason why I've never had a drink. At any rate, so welcome, Bibi, and I hope we can get some things settled today.
America and Israel have what they call the most special bilateral relationship. They're longtime allies and friends. Netanyahu became prime minister again last December. So in this stint, he's been in office for 9 months. But this is the first time that he's meeting Joe Biden. Why is that? Because Biden refused to engage with him. 2 reasons for that. Israel has a far-right government, and they're pushing for a controversial judicial overhaul. Biden is unhappy about both. So for 9 months, he did not meet Netanyahu. That's not a snub. I wonder what is. It is the longest an Israeli Prime Minister has gone without meeting the US President since 1964. So clearly things were not well. But now the two seem to be mending fences and they have a common cause. A normalization deal with Saudi Arabia, brokered by the United States.
I think that under your leadership, Mr. President, we can forge a historic peace between Israel and Saudi Arabia. And I think such a peace would go a long way, first, to advance the end of the Arab-Israeli conflict, achieve reconciliation between the Islamic world and the Jewish state, and advance a genuine peace between Israel and the Palestinians. This is something within our reach.
In 2020, Israel normalized ties with 3 Arab states, the UAE, Bahrain and Morocco. The Abraham Accords were a game changer. But normalizing ties with Saudi Arabia would be the deal of the century. It would change West Asia forever. I mean, these are 2 nations that have fought wars against each other. They do not share official ties, so a deal would be historic. And both sides sound optimistic about it.
There were reports that you had suspended talks.
No, that's not true.
Not true. So you think, if you were to characterize it, are you close?
Every day we get closer. It seems it's for the first time a real one, serious. We're going to see how it goes.
We will see how it goes. That's what the Saudi Crown Prince has to say. So deal looks viable, but conditions apply. Saudi Arabia wants 3 things in exchange. 1, a US defense pact. 2, a civilian nuclear program. And 3, resolving the Palestinian issue. Now, for Israel and the US, the first 2 should be relatively easy. The third, if not handled well, could be a deal breaker.
There is approach from President Biden administration to get to that point. For us, the Palestinian issue is very important. We need to solve that part, and we have a good negotiations continue till now. We gotta see where it will go. We hope that it will reach a place that it will ease the life for the Palestinians and get Israel as a player in Middle East.
Israel currently has its most far-right government in history, so concessions to Palestine are a big no-no. But that's on Benjamin Netanyahu. If he wants a deal, he will have to convince his partners. The other hurdle is Palestine itself. They call the Abraham Accords a betrayal. But this time, they have changed tactics. Palestine has presented Saudi Arabia with a list of demands that they want Riyadh to make on their behalf. Now, they may or may not get what they want, but it won't be for want of trying. And they're not alone. There's another West Asian nation that is rallying for Palestine.
We believe relations with the Zionist regime with regional countries is a stab in the back to the Palestinian people and the resistance of the Palestinians.
Palestine isn't calling it a stab in the back, at least not yet. But Tehran is not mincing words. And why should it? Iran and Saudi Arabia had been enemies for a long time. They've recently repaired ties, but they're still suspicious of each other. In fact, MBS was asked about Iran's nuclear program, and he had only one thing to say. If Iran gets a nuclear weapon, Saudi Arabia will get one too.
If they get one, we have to get one for security reasons and for balancing power in the Middle East, but we don't want to see that.
Well, that's West Asia for you. The sands shift, foes turn into friends, and alliances change. As they say in politics, there are no permanent friends or enemies, only permanent interests. The Canada dampener aside, today was a very important day in India. We often say that the Parliament is the temple of India's democracy, and today India got a new temple. For the first time, India's lawmakers met in the new Parliament building, this one. It was inaugurated back in May 2023, but today the proceedings began. Not without a farewell to the old house, though. The MPs first met in the central hall of the old Parliament. The Prime Minister spoke. So did the Lok Sabha Speaker and opposition leaders. And then they walked to the new building. Now, this current Parliament session had surprised many. It's not a routine session. It was supposed to be a special one. Usually, governments call these special sessions for a specific reason, to pass a certain bill or to discuss something that's very urgent. But this time, the government did not say why. Why was the session called? Hence, there was speculation, and everyone had a theory about what the government would do. Today, the Prime Minister ended all of that. His first speech in the new building revealed the government's plan, the Women's Reservation Bill. Listen to this.
बहनों की भागीदारी सुनिश्चित करने का विषय है और ये बहुत समय से आरक्षण की चर्चा चली थी। हर किसी ने कुछ न कुछ प्रयास किया है, लेकिन और ये 1996 से इसकी शुरुआत हुई है और अटल जी के समय तो कई बार बिल लाए गए, लेकिन नंबर कम पड़ते थे, कुछ उग्र विरोध का भी वातावरण रहता था। एक महत्वपूर्ण काम करने में काफ़ी असुविधा होती थी, लेकिन जब नए सदन में आए हैं, नया होने का एक उमंग भी होता है, तो मुझे विश्वास है कि ये जो लंबे अरसे से चर्चा में रहा विषय है, अब इसको हमने कानून बना करके हमारे देश की विकास यात्रा में नारी शक्ति की भागीदारी सुनिश्चित करने का समय है।
The cabinet passed the bill yesterday, and today it was introduced in the Lok Sabha. The 128th Constitutional Amendment Bill. What does it do? It will reserve 1/3 of all electoral seats for women in India, in the Lok Sabha, in the state assemblies, and in union territories. Let me explain with numbers. Imagine there is a state with 100 seats. Now, if this bill is passed, 1/3 of these seats will be reserved for women. That's around 33 seats. In these seats, only women candidates can contest, and they can contest in other seats as well. But these 33 are exclusively for women. It will apply to reserved seats as well. You see, Indian legislatures have seats reserved for backward communities like scheduled tribes and scheduled castes. 1/3 of these will also be reserved for women. Not all women, only women from that community. Now let's get some questions out of the way. Why was this necessary? Well, if it wasn't obvious, I will tell you why. Politics has a gender problem. In India, women make up only 15% of all Lok Sabha seats. In the Rajya Sabha, that's 14%. Indian states have the same problem. At least 17 states have less than 10% women in their legislatures. How do you correct this? In an ideal world, political parties would do more. They would put up more women candidates. They would cultivate more women leaders. Since that is not happening, India is betting on the next best thing, and that is reservation. In fact, we already do this. In local elections, India reserves 1/3 of the seats for women, like your Panchayat Raj system or your city corporations. And this quota has empowered women. India has around 3.2 million local representatives. 1.45 million of them are women. 1.45 million local representatives. 86,000 women head their local bodies. They call the shots. In fact, India is actually doing better than most countries, at least at the local level. Around 44% of our local representatives are women. 44%. In France, it's 40%. In the UK, 34%. In Germany, 27%. And in China, 23%. So India's plan has worked. But as you go up the hierarchy, it hasn't. We have 28 states in India. Only one of them has a female chief minister. Only one in 28. The goal is to correct this by extending the quota to all elected legislatures. And elected is the key word here because this quota will apply to the Lok Sabha but not the Rajya Sabha. Similarly, it will apply to state assemblies but not state legislative councils. And when will this roll out? Not anytime soon. The bill calls for 3 steps in a particular order. First, census. Second, delimitation. And then quota. India's last census was held in the year 2011. The one in 2021 was delayed by the Wuhan virus pandemic. So the first step is to do another census. And based on that, redraw constituencies. Only then can the women's quota be implemented. And how long will that take? The government has not set a deadline, not that we know of. Some say it's 2026, others say 2029 perhaps. But delays aside, it would be a huge step forward, and we say about time. The roots of this proposal date back to the 1970s. The United Nations asked the Indian government for a report then, the 1970s. They wanted to see our progress on gender equality. So the government of India set up a committee, and what it found was not encouraging. The committee said that India had failed to ensure gender equality, and this triggered a debate. Several states began reserving seats for women. They thought it would solve the problem. In the 1980s, this idea got political backing. In 1987, Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi formed a committee on gender equality. This committee had 353 recommendations. One of them was women's quota. In 1992, this proposal was implemented, only partially though. 1/3 of the seats in local bodies were reserved for women, but state assemblies and the parliament were left untouched. In 1996, Prime Minister H.D. Devegowda went one step ahead. He tabled the whole proposal, 1/3 of seats in all elected bodies. Now, most of the parties agreed to this idea, but some holdouts remained, especially parties representing the OBC community, the other backward classes, OBC. And what was their objection? You see, seats are reserved for the SC and ST community, but not for the OBC. So the fear was that OBC women would lose out, that upper caste women would dominate the quotas. And so the bill was stalled. Since then, every Prime Minister in India has tried to revive this effort. Atal Bihari Vajpayee tried twice, no luck. On one occasion, MPs snatched the bill from the minister's hand. They tore it up. Dr. Manmohan Singh also tried, and he had partial luck. In 2010, the Women's Reservation Bill was passed in the Rajya Sabha, but it never reached the Lok Sabha. So will this time be different? Well, women's quota was the BJP's campaign promise, both in 2014 and again in 2019. Plus, they have a brute majority in parliament, so no coalition business. Which means the proposal will now be a reality. It could usher in a new era of Indian democracy. Meanwhile, Pakistan is bracing for a comeback. That of former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif. It's now become a routine affair too. Sharif wins elections. He gets deposed by the army. He goes into exile, and years later he comes back. I'm surprised that Pakistanis are not tired of this drama. Maybe they are, but then again, what choice do they have? Nawaz Sharif is supposed to return on the 21st of October. He's in London right now. Technically, he's a fugitive from justice. He was convicted in a corruption case, and that's Pakistan politics for you. A fugitive is preparing to be the Prime Minister. This week, he addressed his party workers online. His campaign pitch was a straight one. Sharif said, look at India and Pakistan. Look at India and look at Pakistan. India is going to the moon, while Pakistan is stuck with a begging bowl. Couldn't agree more. Listen to this.
आज हिंदुस्तान चांद पे चला गया है. G20 की मीटिंग्स वहां होती हैं. ये तो सब कुछ हमें करना चाहिए था. ये तो हमारी तकदीर में होना चाहिए था. ये तो हमारी किस्मत में होना चाहिए था कि हम ये करते. वाजपेयी साहब जब वजीर आजम बने तो $1 बिलियन हिंदुस्तान के खजाने में नहीं था, लेकिन आज उनके पास $600 बिलियन जो है ना वो कहां से आ गया है. और हम $1 बिलियन आज भी मुल्क जाके मांग रहे हैं. क्या इज्जत है हमारी आज? उनकी नजरों में भी क्या इज्जत है? चाइना से हम मांगते हैं, अरब मुल्कों से हम मांगते हैं. हमारा वजीर आज़म जाके उसको मजबूर होता है वो मांगने के लिए.
Seems like a new virus in Pakistani politics, praising India. Imran Khan used to say very similar things. He praised India's foreign policy. Even played sound bites of Foreign Minister Jaishankar at his rallies. Now, Nawaz Sharif is doing the same, and the similarities do not end there. Another feature of Imran Khan's rallies was General Bajwa, Pakistan's former army chief. He deposed both Imran Khan and Nawaz Sharif. Imran clearly hasn't forgotten that, and from the looks of it, neither has Nawaz Sharif.
4 जज बैठ के तो करोड़ों लोगों के मैंडेट वाले वजीर आज़म को चलता करते हैं. और कौन पीछे उनके? उसके पीछे जनरल बाजवा और जनरल फैज है. आलाकार कौन है? आलाकार साकिब निसार है. खोसा है वो पनामा वाला बेंच है. इजाजुल हसन है. ये लोग एक करोड़ों अवाम के मैंडेट वाले वजीर आजम को 1 मिनट में छुट्टी करा के उसको जेलों में डालते हैं.
I guess there is agreement there. Both men are accusing Bajwa of toppling them. But what exactly is Nawaz Sharif playing at? Does he have a plan? His party says Nawaz Sharif will arrive in Pakistan next month. And what do countries do when a fugitive returns? They arrest him. Pakistani law requires Nawaz Sharif to be arrested. And yet he is returning. Do you wonder why? Will he serve the remainder of his sentence, or will the courts give him protection? Well, right now your guess is as good as mine, but Sharif's lawyers have not even moved the courts. So if there is a plan, they're hiding it. But let's assume the comeback goes fine. What happens then? Nawaz Sharif's party wants him to lead the campaign. They want him to be Prime Minister. And do their allies agree? Their top ally is the PPP, the Pakistan People's Party, the party of the Bhutto Zardaris. Reports say they are split over Nawaz Sharif becoming the next Prime Minister. Leading this dissent is Bilawal Bhutto, the former Foreign Minister of Pakistan. Reports say Bhutto does not want Nawaz Sharif as Prime Minister. So this alliance is shaky. Not that it matters. Pakistan's elections are usually decided in the barracks, not on the ballot paper. So Sharif's return can only mean one thing. He has struck a deal with the army yet again. The election was supposed to happen in November this year, but that's been delayed. Pakistan will be redrawing its constituencies. Only then will elections be held. So sometime next year, perhaps. The whole point of this delay was to help Nawaz Sharif, to help stage his comeback. Which brings us to the most important question. What will another dose of Nawaz Sharif look like? Another stint? If you ask him, the answer is clear. This is the same man who said Pakistan should have hosted the G20, would have hosted the G20 had he been the Prime Minister. But that's all bluster. The reality is nothing will change. Nawaz Sharif is a 3-time Prime Minister. He is equally responsible for the mess that Pakistan is in. Let's be very clear about that. If Imran Khan is corrupt, so is Nawaz Sharif. If Imran Khan was helped by the army, so was Nawaz Sharif. So how should India see his return? In the past, Nawaz Sharif has made multiple overtures to India. Under him, peace talks have been held. He is also seen as someone who understands why the army should stay out of politics. But will he do something about it? I think we all know the answer. The army is Nawaz Sharif's ticket back home. It is also his ticket to stay out of jail. So this latest comeback is more of a flashback. Now to the country that has no place for women in politics, China. The Communist Party has run China for more than 70 years. Their top decision-making body is called the Politburo, and it has never had a female member in its history, never ever. It's truly a boys' club. And those boys too are now disappearing one by one. The Defense Minister of China is still missing. We told you about his disappearance last week. There's been no update since. Before him, the Foreign Minister went missing. And we have news about him. Some leaked details that shed light on his case. His name is Qinggang. He disappeared in the month of June. He was fired in July. China refused to clarify what happened to him. His official status still remains missing. But the Communist Party knows what happened to him. Recently, they were given a briefing, and the details of that briefing have leaked. So why was Qinggang sacked? The official party line is that he had, and I'm quoting, he had lifestyle issues. What does that mean? What are lifestyle issues? Qinggang had an affair, and that's why he was sacked. And that's what the Communist Party means by lifestyle issues. It's funny and scary. The party does not like to be explicit. Whenever a story like this comes out, they use labels like lifestyle issues to avoid a scandal. So an affair is scandalous, but a disappearance is absolutely okay and routine. Now, despite the best efforts, the story leaked. The best efforts of the Communist Party, the story came out, and Qinggang could be in serious trouble. Reports say he's facing an investigation, an internal Communist Party probe. A report was prepared about this affair. It was presented to senior officials in Beijing. This happened last month. Then there was a Communist Party meeting. Ministers and provincial leaders attended it, and they too were briefed about the report. The focus is on Qinggang's tenure in the United States. He served as China's ambassador there. He was sent in the month of July 2021. He spent barely 2 years in the US, but this posting propelled him to the top. Qinggang was called back in January this year, and that's when Xi Jinping appointed him as the foreign minister. But while he was in the US, Qinggang is said to have had an affair, and it led to the birth of a child. No names were given, presumably to protect the identities, but it made Qin's position untenable. Chinese officials feared that his America-born child could compromise him, and that given this link, he won't be able to represent Chinese interests impartially. So he was removed. But that's not the end of the story. The investigation is still on. The focus is on national security. Did the affair compromise the Chinese diplomat? Were party secrets leaked? That's what the investigators are looking into. And reports say Qing Gang is cooperating with the probe. Not like he has an option. Remember, Xi Jinping is paranoid about national security. In the past, he has warned officials against any affairs. In the year 2012, he famously remarked, and I'm quoting, "You people, you either eat and drink yourselves into the grave or die between the sheets." Those were the words of Xi Jinping. He was complaining about China's ruling class. Now his protege is caught in a scandal, and the timing could not have been worse. The president is becoming more insecure by the day. There is greater scrutiny of Chinese officials, especially those who engage with foreigners. They've been asked to report their dealings. Beijing is especially worried about American spying, and they've tightened the rules to contain leaks. In recent years, high-ranking officials have faced restrictions in China. They're no longer allowed to own large assets abroad or to hold any significant financial interests overseas. Recently, Beijing also expanded this campaign against spies. China's government reached out to its citizens, and they've started courses. They're teaching people how to catch spies. I'm not making this up. I have some examples, in fact. Chinese universities have new rules. Teachers are now required to protect state secrets. They're taking special courses, and attending these classes is mandatory. Even for teachers from veterinary medicine, they must attend these classes too. In Tianjin, the paranoia is even more extreme. Here, teachers at kindergarten level are being taught how to catch spies. Recently, a training was organized in this province. It was to help teachers, quote unquote, understand and use China's espionage law. All of this sounds too bizarre to be true. Also because China has more pressing concerns right now, a stumbling economy, record joblessness, an unstable property market. But President Xi Jinping is busy punishing ministers for having an affair and teaching kindergarten teachers how to catch spies.